Welcome to episode 556 of Get Paid for Your Pad. We are your hosts, Jasper Ribbers and Eric Muller, and the topic for today is how you can stand out from the competition by building a host-driven Airbnb brand. We're going to dive into what exactly that means. Eric, what's going on, man? It's still freezing out there in San Diego?
Dude, it's so crazy here, man. Yeah. So everyone who's watching the video of this podcast, I have multiple different layers on. It is freezing. I feel like I'm back in New Jersey, living here in San Diego. And I was just up in Idlewild a couple of days ago, and we're still getting hit with snow up there. It's crazy. It's crazy.
Wow.
But, it's cool. I'm enjoying it, but I'm excited for the sun to come out.
It's very interesting. The moment we started doing renovations on those properties in Idlewild, it started snowing.
Literally the day that we started, we got 3 feet of snow, which is crazy, but it's all good, man. We can't do too much to the exterior, but the contractor Jake and his crew are just absolutely crushing it, man. Like all 4 units, they're just doing a great job on the interior. So me and the designers are doing our best to kind of keep up with the contractors, which is typically the other way around. So it's all good. It hasn't delayed the project at all.
It almost sounds like smooth sailing so far.
So far, I mean, we found a couple of issues, but so far it's all good, man. I think the biggest challenge, and we'll do another podcast on this, but I think one of the bigger challenges we're going to experience is the budgeting, of course.
Yeah.
Just kind of keeping on track with that. But timeline, we're on track to complete the project in July. So yeah, I'm excited about it.
Sweet.
Free Wild's coming.
Yeah, I'm excited too. I should be there in I've been saying this for like a year and a half now, but I should be there in a month or two.
Yeah, it's gonna be exciting, man. And we'll have a unit done up there, so you guys can stay up there for a bit, get to know the area.
Can't wait! I can't wait. Like it's so crazy. Like we've been talking about this location for almost 2 years, and I still haven't been there. So I'm so excited to go up there.
Yeah. Awesome, man.
Sweet, dude.
Well, let's talk about some personal branding. And why creating a host brand is important.
Yeah, we've been talking about branding for quite a while, right? And the reason is that we're building the brand of Free Wild. So, we always like to share what we're kind of going through. And if you've been listening to the podcast, then you know that our opinion is that in the future, there's 2 type of hosts who are going to be successful in the short-term rental space, right? It's the traditional host, and then it's the professional brand, right? The hospitality brand. So that's why it's important to talk about this. But I think a lot of people will ask this question of, well, building a brand. Like people think of these big companies like Marriott, and they don't associate small businesses or even like just having a few Airbnb listings. They don't consider that a brand, or they don't associate it with a brand. So I think this episode is going to be very powerful for the smaller host who hasn't really thought about building a brand, because building a host driven brand, there's a lot of advantages to it, and it's very doable. So but before we dive into that, like why don't you lay out the 3 different ways that you can build a brand in the short-term rental space?
Yeah, so this is, specific to the short-term rental space, right? I see 3 different ways that the most successful ways of focusing on brand. And we could talk about the value of it, but let's all just assume that everyone who's listening is on the same page that branding. And I have a case study here, 2 case studies where I can prove all of this, or kind of double down on my vision here. That branding is the most important thing that we can do in the short-term rental space today. And there's 3 different ways of doing it. Number 1 is brand individual Airbnb listings, right? And that's really just, we're not really focused on creating a company that's known for a specific brand. We as the individual don't want to be out in front. We just want to focus on the property winning and grabbing the most attention, right? So these are the stuff, and I'm seeing this a lot now, growing. You'll see like it's almost like over designed, over engineered designs in a way where every single element of the property is designed, and you'll see it more times than not, where if the property's in, you know, LA, it says Los Angeles on the wall in like bright paint, or, you know, things like that. Like it ties to the area, that it's a unique property. It has unique features to it, but it's a branded experience, right? There's a company right now that is growing quite aggressively. I think they're called Tech Investor. I just introduced them, reaching out, trying to connect with the owner of this company. I think they have 75 properties, and what they do is they acquire these properties, they design them, but they are not leading with a brand. That, like, their brand is really just focused for the investor to find them. The guest, there's no guest facing brand. It's all about the properties. So their listings look amazing. I don't know what their cash flow is like, but their properties look great. And every single property has a unique individual brand to it, right? So it's not tied into the host, and it's not tied into the company, right? So that's number one. Number two is a host driven brand. This is where the host is out front of the brand. Their identity is attached to the listing. Their identity is attached to the brand itself, right? Somebody who I was using as an example when I was doing this training was the Joshua Tree House, right? So if you guys check out joshuatreehouse.com, Sarah and Rich, they are absolute pros in what they're doing with this. But if you look at all of their listings, you look at their social media, you look at their website, it's really about them. It's their personality, it's their interests, and identity attached to all of their listings. So the guests will connect with the listings, of course, and connect with their brand, but they're really connecting with the hosts themselves. Another company that does this, or hosts that do this extremely well, is Seth and Tori Bolt from Bolt Farm Treehouse, where they have a very unique brand and a very unique listing style. But really, it's their personality. It's the individuals that are bringing their personality and identity to these listings that guests really want to connect with, right? So they're out front. They are. It's a host-driven brand. It's part of who they are. And then lastly is a company-driven brand. And this is where you see more of the companies like Avant Stay. I use them quite a bit because I just love their company. I love what they built. I love what they stand for. And they built a host or company-driven brand. The owners and Sean, the CEO of the company, his face is not attached to this. It's the brand, the company brand itself, their values, all of that are across their listings and their marketing. So people guests are attracted to the company brand versus the individual listings, if that makes sense, or the host itself. So those are the three main directions that we can take if we're focused on growing a business here. And by the way, it doesn't have to be massive, right? Like Rich and Sarah, I think they have 5 or 6 properties that they own, right? Seth and Tori, they own quite a bit of units, but they have, I think, 2 or 3 projects going on. And then, of course, Avant Stay have thousands of units. But yeah, I think those are the 3 main things to focus on: branding individual Airbnb listings, 2, developing a host brand, or 3, developing a company-driven brand.
And you can kind of see how each of those 3 type of brands, how it would help you stand out from the competition, right? Because if you have a branded individual Airbnb listing, it's really the experience of the listing that people are going to go for, right? Pirates Cove or whatever, right? If you love pirates, you want to stay at the Pirates Cave or the Pirates Cove or whatever, right? So you stand out because you're providing that experience, that themed experience. If it's a host driven brand, then the way you stand out is like people are interested in you as a host, right? People align with your values, or what you like doing, or the design that you bring to your units, or whatever that is. People want that personal connection with you, and that's how you stand out. If it's a company driven brand, then it's really the standards, right? It's like, oh, I want to stay at Avant Stay because I know exactly what I'm getting. I know exactly how the check-in process works, I know what I have access to. So it's like the almost like the listing experience, then the connection with the host, and then the standards that are.
Yeah,
And in all three cases, you have something that sets you apart from the competition, but on a different level.
100%.
And
I
they
mean,
can be
at the end,
combined too.
yeah, at the end of the day, it all comes down to the experience, right? So it's we talk about this all the time, right? It comes down to each one of those have a unique experience, right? So even on the host driven brand, you know, your guests are going to be attracted to your property, but what's going to get them to rebook with you in the future, follow you on social media, is you as the individual, because they can see you in those listings. They can see, like, again, the reason why I was using Rich and Sarah Combs, if you guys just follow them on Instagram at the Joshua Tree House, you can check out their website, kind of go down the rabbit hole here. Incredible marketers. Like, you can see from the clothing that they're wearing, to the photos that they take, to the style of the properties, it's all cohesive. It's their personal interest, and it's almost like their art, right? It's almost like, if you're, yeah, it's their creations. You're stepping into and experiencing their art as artists, right? Which is pretty cool, right? So their properties are unbelievable, but people are attracted to who they are and the art that they are creating. And the art is the designs of the property, the way that they market them, their standards. Like, I was going through their Airbnb listings, and they just have incredible reviews, so you can tell they're professionals in every level. Plus they do it extremely well. Their Instagram, they have over 305,000 followers on that one, Instagram channel. So that what they're doing is working. People are attracted to that. Right now, this is the reason why I think this is important for a lot of people to look at is the host driven brand is, and this is what we've been talking about for years, is that if we can develop something that's unique, that we're interested in, that we're passionate about, we're going to have a lot more success in that business than if we do it just to make money, right? There's nothing wrong with building businesses just to make money, but in the short-term rental space, it's so much effort that goes into this experience. The hospitality side is that it's got to be something that you're having fun with and that you love, right? So one thing that you can do is, as you go through this process, and I think everyone gets started in short-term rentals. For the most part, people get started in short-term rentals of, how do I get a property, put it on Airbnb, put some nice furniture in it, start making some money. But as you start building a business, you got to start asking yourself, what interest can you bring? How can you make it unique that shines from your unique personality, right? Because what's great about that is, regardless of what happens to the market, like Sarah and Rich, they're going to be good, man. Like, regardless of what happens to the Joshua Tree market and the market in general, people are going to be attracted to their properties if they continue to do what they're doing. Their host-driven brand is so powerful, and their marketing is so powerful that it will outperform the challenges that Airbnb, just booking on Airbnb, has will or potentially create in the future. Does that make sense? Like, they've developed enough equity in their personal brand that they're not subject to just living on Airbnb. And that's the power of developing a host driven brand, is that it's you. So as long as you're in it and you're excited about it and you're driving it, your business will thrive. That's the power of building, obviously, brands in general, but a host driven brand, nobody has control over that other than you, which is exciting.
So one question is, when you build a host driven brand, can you still have a company name, or is it just like you, the host, like, I'm Jasper, I have an Airbnb profile with a bunch of listings, and you're staying with Jasper, and there's no company name? Or can you still have a company name and have a host driven brand?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the two examples I just used as the host-driven brand is the Joshua Tree by Sarah and Rich, and Bolt Farm Treehouse by Seth and Tori, right? It's like they have brands, and you go to their websites look amazing. You go to their properties, they have company branded products all throughout there, right? And But what I'm talking about is like the connection from the guest that has the connection to their properties. They're being connected to the individuals that are behind it, right? So you don't need to brand. You could do this across the board. You can have a unique property listing brand and a company brand, just like how the Joshua Tree House has it, right? But it's really the individual that's behind it that's driving it all. Like you go to the Joshua Tree House Instagram, and yeah, they're sharing the property, and their photos look amazing, the design looks amazing, but really, the owners of the company are on here. They're showing their personal life, from get married to having their first child and their vacations, the whole thing. So it's, their identity is attached to it. Seth and Tori, it's the same thing. It's like you watch what they're doing. It's very property based, because at the end of the day, guests are coming to stay at your property and experience that. But the scalability, they're connecting to the personality, they're connecting to the interest of what those individuals are bringing to the table, which is exciting, and it's something that you can scale. So yeah, 100%. I think it really comes down to what you want to do, right? So for Free Wild, for example, yeah, I'm looking at Joshua Tree House on Instagram. It's freaking amazing. I love it. For Free Wild, we're going a company-based brand, right? So more of the avant stay style, where we have a unique brand, we have a unique part of the market and asset in the market. We have a unique avatar that we're going after, and we're focused on people connecting to the brand, to the standards, and the values of that brand. We are not going to build it to where our face is attached to the brand, if that makes sense. Right. Yeah. So people are connecting to the brand. They're not connecting to the individual that's behind it. Yeah. Of course, they'll find it. And like, again, my favorite clothing company is called Rourke. I love that brand. I love their focus. I love the whole story, the whole thing. I'm connected to the brand, but because I'm so connected to the brand, I seeked out who are the individuals behind the brand. Now I'm following those guys, and they're not scaling their brand based off of the individuals. They're scaling the brand based off of the company and the product that they put out there.
Yeah. You know what? A really good example of a host-driven brand is actually one of our former SCR Legends Mastermind members, Dave. He has a brand called, it's literally called Stay With Dave.
Yeah.
Right? Staywithdave.com. And when you look at his website, you immediately like understand his personality, right? He likes to his picture on his website, staywithdave.com, is actually, he's sitting in a tuxedo with a glass of wine in his hand. And, you know him, right? He's an awesome guy, but he likes to party and he likes to be a little fancy, like wearing suits and drinking champagne and things like that. And that's what his properties are for too, right? He has these like luxury properties in Los Angeles area. And you look at his Instagram, and it's mostly about him, right? And so the people that, are attracted to that, the people that like that personality, the people that are aligned with that lifestyle, like they're going to be looking at this and they're going to be like, wow, like I want to stay with this guy because I feel like, I'm the same way. I'm like him, right? So that's a really good example as well. Let's dive into some of the advantages of building a host driven brand.
For sure. And one last thing like on this, and I guess this kind of goes into the advantages of it as well. If you look at human psychology and human behavior right now, us as a society and just a human race, of how we're consuming content and where our attention goes. If you watch like Instagram, TikTok, now even YouTube, the way that those channels are scaling, or those platforms are scaling, is authentic content being created by the individual, right? So if the more authentic you can be about who you are, what you're passionate about, and bringing that into your business, into your listings, into your brand, the more that, we talk about this all the time, especially in Legends X, of like, if you're trying to fish for everybody, if you're trying to attract everybody, it's going to be very difficult to get anybody to connect with your brand. But if you start focusing on just a very specific avatar and solving a very specific problem for that avatar with their travel and creating something that's unique about you and bringing that in, you have a better success of scaling a brand than just a cookie cutter short-term rental brand. It's still possible, but that's something unique within itself, right? So the way that we as humans are now starting to connect to certain content and companies and brands is because of we can authentically identify with that brand, right? So don't be afraid of like bringing your interests into your properties and seeking that in your business, because you don't need the world to stay at your properties. You just need a handful of people per year to stay there. And you can find those individuals that share the same interests, or at least appreciate those interests, that will seek out your properties and seek out your brand.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. And one thing to keep in mind as well is like, you don't have to, you might feel like you're not a super interesting person, but you don't have to be the most, exotic person or something for people to be interested, right? Like if you look at like really famous like influencers on YouTube who have millions of followers, who post like vlogs every day, they're really just normal people like you and I, like everybody, right? Because people are just interested in what's real. People are interested in what they can relate to, right? So yeah, any person is interesting, to the world, because we all want to know about each other. So
yep, 100%.
But yeah, let's list out some more advantages of building a host driven brand.
Yeah, well, I think the biggest one there is it's hard for people to compete against you when it's something that's unique in who you are as an individual, right? So keep that in mind. Like if I talk to quite a bit of people that hosts that are just really concerned about the market and where this is going, and Airbnb is not bringing them the demand that they brought them a year ago, and all of that. It's like, if you can focus on developing a unique brand, it's very difficult, especially a host driven brand. It's very difficult for anybody to compete with you, because it's unique. You're one, you're one of one, right? And it's like, if you can bring those interests and that personality into your brands, it's very difficult to compete with that. So it's almost like recession proof, in a way, of knowing that you have control over how you scale this. And this goes into, in Legends X, we have the property abundance plan, right? And that was our approach behind that, was like, hey, let's develop you as a expert in your space. And a lot of it is targeted, it's targeted towards finding properties and becoming an expert, which is still very important to do. But also, you take the same approach with your properties to attracting guests, right? So we have to focus on that, bring that unique factor to our properties. And I'm not just talking, when I say unique factor, I'm not just talking about, cool designs and, the name of your city on the wall and neon lights. I'm talking about, really truly understanding what you're passionate about, and something that you and I have been talking about this a lot lately, of like, hey, can we see ourselves doing what we're doing for the rest of our lives? Like the next 10 years, the next 100 years, can we do this every single day? And I realize, like, in Free Wild, what we're doing there, and where I'm putting my effort towards building the brand, building the experience, like, and finding these properties, I can do that every single day of my life, because it's freaking fun. I love it. And it's unique. And these properties are turning out super unique because of that, because of the passion that's behind it. So it's very difficult to compete with somebody who is passionate and having fun with what they're doing. So I think that's the biggest value you can get from developing a personal brand, a host brand, and a company brand.
Yeah. And I guess another advantage of building a host brand is that you don't have to invest a ton of money into building that, right?
Time. That's the biggest one. Time. You gotta be consistent with it, right? So it's like, you don't, first off, you don't need a lot of money to build any of this stuff, right?
Yeah.
You can do it if you're resourceful. You can find everything on YouTube. Like, you can put it together. If you're bootstrapping this thing and you're clear on what you want to do, you can put this together. You don't need a huge budget to do this. But yeah, I mean, you don't even need a direct booking website. I know everyone talks about direct bookings and how important that is right now. And I think it's important to have that at some point, but you don't necessarily need that until you have your business set up correctly. Right. And it's like, there's a certain threshold as a host that you got to focus on developing the cash flow of the business and the model first before you start investing in all these shiny objects, right? So I think direct booking websites are great, and working with people like Boostly and companies like that are cost effective, that can get up a professional looking site. If you have that cash, definitely do it for sure. But the most important side here is you don't need a massive budget. You got to just get clear on what is this brand and product that you're bringing forward, what makes you unique. And then on the content side, you have to talk about your business consistently, right? And it's something that you and I experienced in Overnight Success. We got so deep into building the product and fulfilling that we weren't talking about the product, the business consistently. And we see a drop off in scalability on that front end. So then we realize, like, oh crap, well, we have to share what we're actually doing on the back end consistently with the world. And once we start doing that, people attract to it, right? And we've been doing that on social media and obviously on the podcast, and it's been a huge benefit, right? So when it comes to the property, if you're going to build this brand, you have to consistently post, you have to consistently talk about the brand and share why it's unique and what you love about it. It also has to be decent content. It can't, it can build. It's the same thing, right? You got to build content and talk about the things that you're passionate about because you love to do it, versus building content just to grab eyeballs and scale. Because if you do that, typically it doesn't work. But the ones that you're sharing the things that you're authentic about and you care about, and that you're having fun with, it really starts to grow. People really connect to it.
Yeah, that's super important that you enjoy doing it, because the results are, and we've mentioned this many times, the results always come from the consistency behind it, right? This is podcast number, what is it, 556, right? That's consistency, right? 9 years or something. I wouldn't be able to do that on Instagram because I don't like it. I don't like posting on Instagram. Right. I've tried it many times, but I always end up stopping because I just don't enjoy it. I enjoy this, so I can keep doing this for, like you said, for the rest of my life, pretty much.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you got to have fun with the process, guys. So like, as you start building your brand, it's like, yeah, you don't need a lot of cash to do this. We're taking a different approach when it comes to Free Wild. We are raising, and we have raised, and we will continue to raise seed capital to build the brand, because we have a very large vision behind it. And it's something that, we bootstrapped a handful of brands prior to this, which were great. But for Free Wild, we want to take a pretty large action here and gain some traction. And, we understand the pieces to it. So we are raising to build a brand at a high level, but it's still the same ingredients, right? Of getting clear on what the brand is, who we're serving, why we're serving them, what is our asset, what makes us truly unique, and then how do we consistently communicate this to the world over and over again so we can connect with people. So we're building that now, and obviously once we launch in a couple of months here, you guys will see like the consistency that's behind it. But yeah, I mean, you don't need a lot of money to build this. You just need to be clear and consistent and patient through the process.
Yeah, it's just consistent action taking, and it's a little bit outside of the comfort zone, going a little outside of the comfort zone too, because a lot of us students that I talk to, when they have the plan of the property abundance plan of like putting themselves out there and doing videos and things like that, they've chosen their channel, and then it's like, ooh, everybody gets a little nervous, when you start recording yourself and you start taking,
Yeah.
some people don't even like taking pictures of themselves. Right. So,
Right.
it's also, just allowing yourself to go a little outside of the comfort zone and just putting yourself out there, right? Sharing yourself with the world. And you do that consistently, and that's going to bring results.
100%.
Cool, man. I think we covered most aspects here, but the reason I really wanted to talk about this is because we talk a lot about free wild, but I recognize that the majority of the people that are listening to this podcast, they don't have that larger kind of vision that we have for free wild. So I just wanted to make the topic of branding relevant to everybody who's listening, and it really is relevant to anybody. Even if you have one listing, you could do a listing, what you call it, a brand individual Airbnb listing, individual branded Airbnb listing, or you could also build a host driven brand very simply with your Airbnb listing, just by just building out your Airbnb profile a bit more, right? And talking about like what you love about hosting, and sharing on Instagram, just going on Instagram and sharing with the world why you love hosting, and putting up pictures of what your guests are doing, and just sharing your story. That's a very simple way. It doesn't cost any money. It's a very simple way to start building that host driven brand.
100%. Yeah. And I think everyone should focus on that regardless of where we're at in our business. So hopefully you guys found that valuable. I think I'm just maybe it's this whole thing of like, you ever hear when you buy a car, a brand new car, you start seeing that car on the street more often.
Yeah.
And your brain is kind of
100%.
like, looking for those patterns. Well, now that we're so deep into building this brand, and with the mind, and obviously working with all the people that we work with inside Legends X and Rising Stars, is that, I start to notice that the most successful hosts and companies focus on brand driven experiences, right? And there's more and more companies now that are just simply focusing on their brand, that are narrowing further down to a certain avatar and a certain asset class, right? When it comes to properties, and when I talk to these companies that are doing some pretty incredible things in the space, like, it's very clear that the whole just kind of shotgun approach of just taking on any property and having a million properties in one location and having, inconsistent experiences across those properties are not the best way to scale moving forward. It's just that the industry has matured from what it was years ago. So I think this is the most important thing that we can do. And we're gonna continue to chat about this, and excited to kind of share what we're doing in the space as well. So follow for everybody who wants to see host driven brands, follow the Joshua Tree, so Sarah and Rich Combs. Follow Bolt Farm Treehouse, Seth and Tori Bolt. And then if you want to look at company facing brands, the best would be Avant Stay. And then of course follow us on Instagram, and check out our website, Freewild, FREEWYLD.com, and stay Freewild on Instagram, and you can start seeing like what we're building there.
Yeah. We also have a you can also put your email down and get future updates from us if you want to kind of follow along how we're building this brand, and getting updates on what's happening on that side.
That's it, y'all.
That's it. Awesome. All right, man. That's it for today. So thank you, and to the listeners, have a great weekend. On Monday, we'll be back with another episode of Get Paid for Your Pad. So we'll see you soon.